The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of the Colosseum as thousands of Roman citizens streamed through its towering arches. Among them, clutching their parents' hands, were children, some barely old enough to walk, others on the cusp of adolescence. Their eyes sparkled with anticipation, their voices chattering excitedly about the day's promised entertainment. They had no idea they were about to witness horrors that would haunt civilizations for millennia to come. Picture yourself standing among those crowds, feeling the electric energy of anticipation crackling through the air. The sweet aroma of roasted nuts mingles with the metallic scent of something darker, something you can't quite identify yet. Children laugh and point at the magnificent architecture towering above them, their innocent voices echoing off stone walls that have absorbed the screams of thousands. But this isn't a story about Roman engineering or architectural marvels. This is about something far more disturbing, something that reveals the darkest corners of human nature and the terrifying power of cultural conditioning. This is the story of how an entire civilization normalized the unthinkable, and how the most vulnerable members of society, children, were systematically exposed to brutality as a form of education. Before we dive deeper into this dark chapter of human history, I want you to hit that like button if you're ready to explore the uncomfortable truths about how societies shape young minds. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's most disturbing moments, and let me know in the comments. How do you think witnessing such violence affected these children's development? The Roman Empire, at its height, controlled over 65 million square kilometers and governed nearly 70 million people. Its influence stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. Yet for all its achievements in law, engineering, and governance, Rome harbored a darkness that permeated every aspect of society, a casual acceptance of violence that would shock modern sensibilities. Imagine being a 7-year-old Roman child, awakened before dawn on the day of the games. Your father, perhaps a wealthy merchant or government official, announces that today you'll witness the greatest spectacle the empire has to offer. You dress in your finest tunic, excitement building as you join the procession toward the arena. The adult conversations around you buzz with anticipation. Discussions of favorite gladiators, betting odds, speculation about which exotic beasts will be unleashed. You don't yet understand that you're about to receive what Romans considered an essential education in power, death, and the natural order of their world. You don't realize that the cheers you'll hear will be for human suffering, or that the lessons you'll learn will be written in blood across sand-covered floors. The truly chilling aspect of this story isn't just that children witnessed these spectacles. It's how deliberately they were included, how methodically Roman society conditioned its youngest members to accept, enjoy, and eventually perpetuate cycles of violence. Parents didn't shield their children from the arena's horrors. They enthusiastically brought them along, believing they were providing valuable moral instruction. Some historians whisper of children who wept at their first games, only to be scolded by parents who demanded they show proper Roman fortitude. Others claim that by their second or third visit, these same children would cheer as loudly as any adult when a gladiator delivered a killing blow. Letters from the period suggest that noble families considered arena attendance a rite of passage, as essential to a child's development as learning Latin or mathematics. What kind of society creates such rituals? What psychological mechanisms allow entire populations to normalize extreme violence? And perhaps most disturbingly, what happened to the children who grew up in this environment? As we embark on this journey through one of history's darkest educational practices, prepare yourself for a story that will challenge everything you think you know about childhood, civilization, and the thin veneer that separates barbarism from what we call progress. The ghosts of Roman children still echo through the Colosseum's corridors, and their story demands to be told. The Roman educational philosophy. 900 words. To understand how Roman children came to witness such brutality, we must first grasp the fundamental philosophy that governed their upbringing. Roman education wasn't merely about literacy or mathematics, it was about forging citizens capable of ruling the world's greatest empire. And in the Roman mind, this required exposure to life's harshest realities from the earliest possible age. Picture the villa of a wealthy Roman patriarch, where children as young as 5 begin their formal education. But unlike modern classrooms filled with colorful books and gentle encouragement, Roman education was built on a foundation of discipline, hierarchy, and unflinching acceptance of violence. The Latin phrase durum, said just, harsh, but just, wasn't merely an educational motto, it was a way of life. Roman parents believed that sheltering children from reality was not just foolish, but dangerous. How could future senators make life and death decisions about war and peace if they had never witnessed death? How could future generals command legions if they flinched at the sight of blood? How could the daughters of Rome raise strong sons if they themselves were weak and squeamish? This philosophy permeated every aspect of childhood. While Greek education emphasized physical beauty and intellectual development, Roman education focused on practical skills and moral fortitude. Children learned that mercy was weakness, that compassion could be exploited, and that the strong naturally ruled over the weak. These weren't abstract concepts taught from textbooks. They were lived experiences, demonstrated daily in the family's treatment of slaves and reinforced spectacularly in the arena. Imagine being a Roman child listening to your father explain why you must attend the games. His voice carries the weight of generations of tradition as he describes how your grandfather brought him to his first spectacle, and how his grandfather did the same. The arena teaches lessons no tutor can provide, he might say. You will learn about courage and cowardice, about honor and shame, about the natural order that makes Rome supreme over all nations. But this wasn't merely about witnessing violence. It was about understanding power dynamics through the most extreme examples possible. When a gladiator knelt before the crowd, waiting for the thumbs up or thumbs down that would determine his fate, children learned that life and death were matters of imperial will. When criminals were torn apart by wild beasts, they absorbed the lesson that challenging Roman authority brought swift and terrible consequences. The most chilling aspect of this educational philosophy was its systematic nature. Parents didn't simply drag children to random violent spectacles. They carefully selected appropriate events based on the child's age and social status. A 6-year-old might start with animal hunts, where exotic beasts fought each other or were slaughtered by professional hunters. By age 10, they'd graduate to gladiatorial combat between heavily armored fighters where death was less common. Only older adolescents were considered ready for the most extreme spectacles. Mass executions, fights to the death between unarmored opponents, or the horrific beast hunts where condemned criminals faced certain death. Some letters from Roman mothers reveal the careful consideration given to these decisions. Little Marcus showed excellent composure during the leopard hunts. One might write to a relative, "I believe he's ready for his first gladiatorial exhibition next month." Another correspondence from Pompeii mentions a mother debating whether her 8-year-old daughter was mature enough to witness executions. She cried during the animal slaughter, but I believe it was from excitement rather than weakness. The truly disturbing element wasn't the violence itself, but how Romans convinced themselves it was beneficial for their children. They developed elaborate justifications. The arena taught children about justice, as criminals faced punishment for their crimes. It demonstrated Roman superiority, as foreign captives were humiliated and destroyed. It revealed divine favor, as the gods allowed Rome's representatives to triumph over chaos and barbarism. Teachers and philosophers of the era wrote extensively about the educational value of these spectacles. Seneca, despite his later reservations about gladiatorial games, initially praised their ability to teach children about fortune's fickleness and death's inevitability. Better that they learn these truths in the safety of the arena, he wrote, than discover them unprepared on some distant battlefield. But beneath these intellectual justifications lay a darker truth. Roman society was perpetuating cycles of violence by conditioning each new generation to accept brutality as entertainment. Children who might naturally recoil from suffering were systematically trained to enjoy it, to cheer for it, to see it as proof of their civilization's greatness. What seemed like educational wisdom would soon reveal itself as something far more sinister. The very children Romans sought to strengthen through these exposures would grow into adults capable of unimaginable cruelty, not because they were inherently evil, but because they had been taught from infancy that human suffering was not only acceptable but admirable when properly contextualized. The stage was now set for one of history's most disturbing experiments in childhood development, where an entire civilization would discover just how malleable young minds could be when exposed to systematic brutalization disguised as moral instruction. Dawn breaks over Rome, and in a marble villa overlooking the Tiber, 7-year-old Gaius Aurelius awakens to excited whispers from the household slaves. Today is special. Today, his father will take him to witness the great games celebrating the emperor's recent military victories. The boy has heard older children speak of the arena in hushed, reverent tones, but nothing could prepare him for what lies ahead. Picture young Gaius as he dresses in his finest white tunic, the purple stripe marking his patrician status catching the morning light. His hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. His father, Marcus Aurelius, kneels beside him, placing heavy hands on small shoulders. "Today, my son, you become a true Roman," he intones solemnly. "You will see why our empire rules the world, and why other nations tremble at our name." The family joins the river of humanity flowing toward the Colosseum. Gaius marvels at the massive structure growing larger with each step, its limestone facade gleaming like bone in the morning sun. The boy's senses are overwhelmed, vendors hawking sweet cakes and salted meat, musicians playing festive tunes, the excited chatter of thousands of voices echoing off marble surfaces. This feels like the greatest celebration imaginable. But some whispered conversations drift through the crowd, carrying words young Gaius doesn't fully understand. 23 criminals for the beast hunts, one man mentions casually. Plus the new shipment of Dacian prisoners, fine fighters, should give good sport before they die. His father nods approvingly at such talk, and Gaius files these mysterious phrases away, sensing their importance without grasping their meaning. As they climb the stone steps to their seats, prime locations befitting Marcus's senatorial rank, Gaius gazes down at the arena floor in wonder. The sand looks clean and golden, carefully raked into perfect patterns. He doesn't yet understand why sand is needed, why it must be so deep, or why slaves wait nearby with fresh rakes and wheelbarrows full of more pristine sand. The opening ceremony begins with a magnificent parade. Gaius's eyes widen as gladiators march past in gleaming armor, their weapons catching the light like captured stars. These men look like gods to the boy, tall, muscular, radiating an aura of deadly competence. When they raise their weapons toward the imperial box and shout, "Ave Caesar! Morituri te salutant! Hail Caesar! We who are about to die salute you!" Gaius feels a thrill of pride at being part of this grand spectacle. His father leans close, pointing out different types of gladiators. See the retiarius with his net and trident? He represents Neptune's power over the sea. The murmillo with his fish-crested helmet shows Rome's dominion over all waters. Each explanation makes the violence seem noble, mythological, almost religious in its significance. The first event begins, a beast hunt featuring exotic animals from across the empire. Lions, tigers, bears, and strange creatures Gaius has never imagined pace nervously in the arena. Professional hunters, the venators, enter with spears and shields. The crowd's excitement builds to a roar as the first confrontation begins. What happens next shatters something fundamental in young Gaius's worldview. The magnificent lion, a creature that seemed almost divine in its power and beauty, suddenly screams in very mortal agony as a spear pierces its side. Blood, darker and more shocking than anything the boy has imagined, pools in the golden sand. The wounded animal's thrashing grows weaker, more desperate, until it collapses with a final shuddering breath. For a moment, Gaius sits frozen, his mind struggling to process what he's witnessed. The crowd erupts in approval, adults around him cheering and laughing. His father claps enthusiastically, then notices his son's pale face and wide, shocked eyes. "Don't look away, boy," Marcus commands sternly. A Roman faces reality without flinching. That beast was wild, untamed. See how Roman skill conquered it? This is why barbarians fear us, why the gods grant us victory. When Gaius continues to stare in horrified fascination, his father's voice hardens. "Would you shame our family name? Your ancestors conquered Gaul and Germania. Will their descendant weep over a dead animal?" The subtle threat in those words cuts deeper than any blade. Gaius forces himself to watch as more animals are slaughtered, each death accompanied by thunderous approval from the crowd. Gradually, the boy begins to notice details his initial shock had obscured. The skill required to make clean kills, the way successful hunters played to the crowd, the almost choreographed beauty of perfectly executed spear throws. By the third beast hunt, something has shifted inside him. When a particularly impressive kill brings the crowd to its feet, Gaius finds himself cheering along, swept up in the collective excitement. His father's approving nod brings a warm flush of pride that temporarily overwhelms the sick feeling in his stomach. But the day's true test comes with the gladiatorial combats. Two heavily armored fighters enter the arena, and the crowd's energy reaches fever pitch. These aren't animals. These are men, and Gaius can see intelligence in their eyes, fear mixed with determination as they prepare to fight for their lives. The combat is brief but savage. One gladiator's shield splinters under his opponent's hammer blow, leaving him vulnerable. The following strike crushes his helmet, and he falls to the sand, blood streaming from his head. The crowd holds its collective breath as the victor looks toward the imperial box for judgment. The emperor's thumb turns downward. What follows burns itself into Gaius's memory forever. The dying gladiator doesn't beg or weep. He maintains dignity even as his opponent's blade finds his heart. But there's something in his eyes as life fades, something very human and terrible that no amount of Roman philosophy can explain away. That night, Gaius lies awake on his sleeping couch, staring at ceiling frescoes that now seem to mock him with their painted serenity. He has witnessed power in its purest form, the power to grant life or death with a simple gesture. He has seen courage and cowardice, skill and brutality, the thin line between civilization and savagery. More disturbing still, he realizes part of him enjoyed it. The excitement, the communal energy, the intoxicating sense of being part of Rome's greatness. These feelings war with his lingering horror, creating a confusion that will shape the rest of his life. His father was right about one thing. After today, Gaius would never be the same. The question that would haunt him and thousands of other Roman children was whether this transformation represented growth or corruption, strength or the death of something essential to the human soul. In the weeks following young Gaius's first arena experience, his parents watched carefully for signs of how deeply the lessons had taken root. What they observed would have chilled modern child psychologists, but to Roman minds, it represented successful education in the harsh realities of imperial power. The boy's initial nightmares lasted only a few days. His mother, Livia, noted with satisfaction in her daily correspondence how quickly her son adapted to his new understanding of the world. "The dreams have stopped," she wrote to her sister in Gaul. "Yesterday I found him playing gladiators with his toy soldiers, recreating the combats with remarkable accuracy. He shows proper Roman fortitude." But what Livia interpreted as strength was actually something far more complex and disturbing. The rapid psychological adaptation that allows children to survive traumatic experiences by incorporating them into their normal worldview. Modern research into childhood trauma reveals how malleable young minds can be, how quickly they'll accept even horrific realities as normal if the adults around them present such experiences as positive and necessary. Picture the subtle ways Roman society reinforced these lessons in the days and weeks following a child's first arena visit. Neighborhood children gathered to compare their experiences, older boys boasting about their composure during particularly brutal moments. Parents praised children who showed proper reactions while expressing disappointment in those who seemed too sensitive. Tutors incorporated arena references into lessons about history, mythology, and moral philosophy. The psychological mechanisms at work were devastatingly effective. Children who might naturally recoil from violence learned to suppress those instincts through a combination of social pressure, parental approval, and the intoxicating sense of belonging to something greater than themselves. The arena became associated with family bonding, social status, and cultural identity, making it almost impossible for young minds to reject the violence without rejecting their entire social world. Some contemporary accounts reveal the disturbing speed of this transformation. A letter from Pliny the Younger describes visiting a friend's villa where children as young as 8 played elaborate gladiator games, complete with wooden swords and detailed rules about when pretend fighters should die honorably. What struck him most wasn't the violence of their play, but their sophisticated understanding of arena protocols and their casual discussions of combat strategies. The normalization process worked through several key psychological principles that Roman society, intentionally or not, had perfected. First was the gradual escalation. Children weren't immediately exposed to the most extreme violence, but rather brought along a carefully calibrated progression from animal hunts to gladiatorial combat to mass executions. Each level of exposure prepared them for the next, building tolerance for increasingly graphic spectacles. Second was the social context. Violence wasn't presented as random brutality, but as structured entertainment with rules, meanings, and cultural significance. Children learned to see patterns in the chaos, to appreciate skill and strategy even in lethal combat. This intellectual framework allowed them to distance themselves emotionally from the human suffering while engaging cerebrally with the spectacle. Perhaps most insidiously, the arena experience was woven into the fabric of family relationships and social connections. Children who attended games with beloved parents, who shared snacks and conversations during intermissions, who felt special and grown up in these adult environments, naturally associated the violence with love, acceptance, and belonging. To reject the games would mean rejecting these positive emotional connections. Archaeological evidence from Roman homes reveals how deeply arena culture penetrated domestic life. Mosaic floors depicted gladiatorial scenes. Oil lamps bore images of famous fighters. Children's toys included miniature amphitheaters complete with tiny gladiators. Even in private moments away from the actual spectacles, Roman children were surrounded by reminders that violence was not only acceptable but admirable. The letters and diary fragments that survive from this period offer glimpses into young minds grappling with these experiences. One teenage girl writes to a friend about her excitement over an upcoming execution of Christian prisoners. "Father says we'll see how false gods abandon their followers to Roman justice. I can hardly sleep thinking about it." Her casual anticipation of human suffering, expressed in the same tone modern teenagers might use to discuss a concert or festival, reveals how completely the normalization process had succeeded.